Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking episode 1 of season 2 of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. called Shadows. So the show is back, and now that they don't have a big reveal from one of the Marvel movies kind of hanging over their heads, once that came out, the show really took the brakes off, and now we're finally getting a season where they don't have that holding them back, and this episode shows that they're off to a really good start now that the chains have been taken off, basically. So, with that said, I got my Marvel gear on, so let's kind of get right into things. Now, obviously, when we start off with a flashback in World War II, or just after World War II, that's obviously set up for the Agent Carter show that's going to be coming on the air in January. From what I've heard, they've only confirmed that they've only confirmed a handful of episodes right now, but depending on how people react, they might do more. I have a feeling that the network is going to be paying very close attention to the fan reaction to this episode of the show, so we'll see. Now that said, what we do see of Agent Carter, Haley Atwell, again actually playing herself, with guest appearances by the characters of Jim Morita and Dum Dum Dugan. Very cool, of the Howling Commandos. It's good stuff. I mean, they show that Peggy Carter is, cool. She's badass, and she's very take charge. And it makes sense that, and is established in canon that she and Howard Stark were the ones that founded S.H.I.E.L.D. So you can see that Peggy, she's definitely got the chops to be the person that can pull off that kind of thing. And I especially loved how, just as she's really sort of strolling onto the scene to take charge after the bad guys have been taken down, you hear some sort of kind of very classic-y sort of spy music very briefly in the background. And I couldn't help but wonder if that maybe might be Peggy's own theme music for the Agent Carter show. But in any case, they are definitely, well, as I said, basically I think this is, if this is a good indication of what Agent Carter is going to be like, then I think Agent Carter is going to be a great show. Now, as for what else we see in that flashback, I just love that they're just absolutely unapologetic. Like, yep, we're stealing so much stuff from Raiders of the Lost Ark here. You know it, we know it. Let's just run with it. Of course, this also introduces us to our main bad guy for probably for the season. That's a Hydra agent named Gorgon, who apparently hasn't aged since the Second World War. I can't recall having ever read any comics with Gorgon in it. He's actually a fairly new character to the Marvel Universe, and he's just to be basically kind of a very, very competent, very dangerous Hydra agent. I really don't know very much about him. So I don't really have too much to say about that, but I definitely did enjoy the kind of laying out the details of what happened in the aftermath of the movies, or the name dropping the Red Skull, just so we don't forget that he's probably still out there, probably going to be showing up again in Captain America 3. But, whatever. And of course we get to see our little weird doodad that's going to be the first big MacGuffin of the season. And we'll talk some more about that later. But anyway, so the show definitely does get off to a really nice start with the flashback. Now, when we jump to the present, what I really like is here we see that they've really, as we've seen, of course, things have been completely turned on their head. Last season, it was all about like, hey, we're the world's most ultra badass spy agency for most of the season. And now here it is, they're kind of very living the intelligence world's version of living very hand to mouth. I mean, sure, they still have some of their toys, and it doesn't look like anybody's going hungry, but they are very much out in the cold. They've been basically branded as criminals. The whole thing with Glenn Talbot and special guest star George Stephanopoulos is, Talbot basically saying, "Oh yeah, we've totally got this Hydra thing under control. Don't worry about them anymore." And it's like, oh yeah, well, those S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who are still running around, we totally need to throw them in jail. Of course, Talbot is not unjustified in these feelings. I mean, yeah, he doesn't even points out that Coulson did beat him and his team up the last time that they saw each other. And as much as Coulson might say, "Hey, I'm not a bad guy," well, what proof does? Why in the world should Talbot take him at his word? After all, if Coulson really believed in this, then well, why doesn't he turn himself in and due process of law? Now, you and I know that's probably would be a very, very bad move on Coulson's part. But keep in mind, Talbot is a military man. He's a man who has dedicated himself to order, to a system, to procedure. In many ways, not unlike Coulson himself. But again, part of the thing with Talbot in the comics is that he's basically one of the guys who's really big on having the army constantly hunt down the Incredible Hulk. And of course, if you read the comics, you sympathize with the Hulk, and the Hulk even constantly says, "Just Hulk wants to be left alone." Well, that's all well and good, but look at it the perspective of the military. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Just like say to the president or the American people, like, "Oh yeah, the super powerful green monster just kind of wants to be left alone to wander the United States according to his whims. So he's done a really good job of beating us up. So we're just going to leave him to that." Yeah, that ain't gonna fly. So even if Talbot didn't personally believe that he was doing the right thing in hunting down Coulson, he probably wouldn't be given much of a choice in the matter. But it would be interesting to see a more sympathetic Talbot. But after this episode, I don't think we're going to get to see that. Now, to be completely fair to Talbot, he's not a stupid guy. If you really show him undeniable evidence, put it in his face, I have a feeling that he is, albeit reluctantly, going to admit that he might have been wrong. But, that's going to be a pretty hard sell. And yeah, Coulson saved his life, but from Talbot's perspective, it doesn't really look like that. It looks like he was kidnapped, and eventually they're probably going to figure out pretty quickly that they used, fingerprints and voice things from Talbot in order to break into that military base and steal a Quinjet, which is just going to damage Coulson's case even further. And I definitely got to say, I love Adrian Pasdor as Talbot. He's a great actor. Loved him on Heroes. He's of course done the voice of Iron Man in a lot of Marvel's animated work in the last recent years. He's just a really, really great guy from Marvel to have brought into the sort of Marvel under the Marvel banner. Now with that said, let's kind of move in and talk about the agents themselves. Not a huge amount to say about what's going on with Lucy Lawless and her crew. I'm not even 100% sure if Lucy Lawless's character is even still alive at the end of this episode. It certainly didn't look like that. And if so, well, cool that you got Lucy Lawless to guest star and all that, but jeez, you kill off Lucy Lawless's character in one episode? Man, talk about a waste. Not really too much to say about the greedy British guy, who I think is the only one we're absolutely sure is still alive at the end of the episode, because he played dead in a scene that was very reminiscent of the Winter Soldier trying to kill Nick Fury in the Captain America movie, at least in my mind. But he's just sort of greedy, in it for the money kind of guy who probably is going to have some sort of change of heart as the season wears on, because I believe that actor, and again, remember, I'm terrible at remembering actors' names. I remember Lucy Lawless because I was alive in the 90s and watched more than a little Xeno Warrior Princess during those days. But anyway, not a huge amount to say about him. Getting into the team proper. First of all, bringing in Isabel Hart, that's Lucy Lawless's character, and her mercenary people. Well, that's kind of cool. It did sort of give Coulson more people to work with, and made it so that May was not the only minority person anymore. I mean, granted, Triplet did sort of join the team late in the game, but here he's a full-fledged member. It's not just, these cool white people and the really badass Asian chick anymore. And the show is very much the better for it. That was one of the allegations that was really leveled at the show more than once last year that I really could not dispute. I mean, in this day and age, they needed a little bit more work on the diversity front there. But, the past is the past, right? So, getting back to Triplet. He doesn't have a lot going on this episode, but he's just portrayed as maybe the person who's taking what's happening to them best. Or maybe he's just portrayed as a generally optimistic person. In any case, Triplet seems to be trying to make the best of what's going on, I think. And I like how when he infiltrates the base, he goes under the name of General Jones. Now, this is a really subtle nod, but oh darn it! Hang on a second. Whatever. Jones was the name of the one black guy who was in the Howling Commandos, and I thought I had that information called up, but I didn't. And it's widely assumed that this is Triplet's grandfather that he's mentioned before. So that would probably have to make him Triplet's maternal grandfather. And if so, that's pretty cool. And it certainly underscores why he'd be such a big S.H.I.E.L.D. geek. His grandfather being one of the commandos and possibly somebody who was later recruited into S.H.I.E.L.D. And keep in mind, if S.H.I.E.L.D. was founded sort of like back in the day, them having an agent who was black, oh man, that would have really been something. I mean, black people and white people couldn't even get married legally until 1966. So, again, it's just certainly something to think about. Now, let's move on and talk about May. Again, she doesn't, besides, May gets her usual shtick where she gets to go out there and be a cool badass. But apart from that, she sort of reminds Coulson that her job is to be the one that keeps an eye on him. And one has to wonder, after the end of the last episode, wouldn't somebody wake up there and go like, hey, why is all this crazy alien writing on the wall? Where did it come from? I guess we better go check the security tapes. Oh geez, it's Director Coulson. He seems to be doing this in a trance. I really would like an explanation as to, what exactly transpired there, because it does seem rather important. But, yeah, so May is still there, kind of like, Director, you're not going crazy, are you? Or you're not working yourself to an early grave. And I like that she does remind us that that's kind of her role there. As for Coulson, well, it is pretty fitting, I think, that the title of the next episode is Heavy is the Head. And Coulson's really got the weight of the world on his shoulders. But, Fury made the right call in appointing him as his successor. If anybody's going to be able to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. after this, it's going to be Coulson. I mean, in Fury's mind, Coulson counts as an equal to Thor, or Captain America, and Iron Man. So, yeah, and I love that Coulson knows this. I really just think it adds to the burden, knowing that Fury has such high expectations for him. And Coulson has clearly been running himself ragged, but as he even says, we've got so many guys who turned Hydra, so many guys who got locked up by people like Talbot, people who ran off to the corporate sector like Maria Hill did. And you have to imagine there are probably also some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents out there who are like Coulson in hiding, and those seem to be the people that he's out there trying to find. And of course, there's also the problem of trying to find people who just flat out haven't sold S.H.I.E.L.D. out to save their own skins or to try and get rich, like the guy who gets killed in this episode. But we do see that when he says that whole thing of continue the mission even when Isabel Hartley's been hurt, that Coulson has what it takes to make the tough calls. Not a huge amount to say about Skye. She's just been promoted to full-fledged S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Very, very May 2.0 coming in the way she's coming along. And of course, she still, understandably, completely and utterly hates Ward and just cannot stand to be near him. Which brings us to Ward, who's locked up in the basement. Now, I really think that what they got going on with Ward is really interesting stuff. We've seen that he's made some suicide attempts. He's all like, "Oh yeah, Sky, I want to help you, and I've made peace with what I've done." Now, unless I missed it, I don't think Ward ever actually apologized for what he did. He just simply said that he'd made peace with it. And remember, one of the things that Ward said towards the end of last season to Sky was, "Maybe we can be monsters together." And I can't help but wonder if that's still not on his mind. After all, Ward's a smart and resourceful guy. I mean, he demonstrated that by finding a way to slash his wrists using paper. But Ward also knows that he's in a place where if he makes a suicide attempt, they'll almost certainly be able to save him. So if this isn't all kind of an act leading up to something, I can't help but wonder. I mean, Ward does have the smarts to think of something like that. And I attempted to commit suicide because of what I'd done. Well, multiple suicide attempts are fairly compelling evidence. So I can't help but wonder if they aren't going to try something like the Suicide Squad that they have over on Arrow. Stick a bomb in him and say, "Okay, you're a badass. We need you, but if you pull anything, we'll kill you." Really fun if they said like, "Oh yeah, if you pull anything, Sky will kill you. In fact, we're gonna give Sky the big red button. If she feels at any time that you deserve to die, we won't ask her any questions." But again, that's just kind of me speculating a little bit. But I love that Ward knows something about her dad. That means Ward has something that Sky just can't resist. Ward has something that Sky needs. And a guy like Ward, he knows that's all the opening he's going to need for when he pulls whatever it is that he's obviously planning. Okay, well, Fitz. Now, Fitz, man. I was really kind of not too happy about what was going on there with Fitz and Simmons because it looked like Simmons had just sort of devolved into nothing more than Fitz's nursemaid. Then we find out, well, what's really going on, and it's like, oh wow, Fitz is just a completely broken guy. It's like having a relative with dementia or Alzheimer's or some really unpleasant mental illness around your house. Yeah, there are those moments when they're lucid, but having those moments just makes it all the worse when they suddenly drift off back to La La Land. I mean, the other agents around him just look at him and there's just nothing but pity. So you have to wonder. What's going to happen there, huh? Now let's talk about the weird metal that they found in that warehouse. That's the big MacGuffin this episode. Now, if you look carefully at it, when Isabel grabs it, you can see there's Kree writing on it, and we know it's Kree because, and credit where credit's due, Charlie over at the Emergency Awesome, he found a screenshot from last season where you could see that writing on the skin of the blue alien, which has basically been confirmed as being a Kree, particularly by Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, it's Kree writing. Now this brings up a lot of possibilities. The first thing that jumps to my mind, the first thing that really jumps to mind is crazy metals in the Marvel universe. Well, that's probably vibranium. I don't think they have the rights to adamantium because that's kind of an X-Men thing. But there's also a bunch of stuff with various minerals that if I remember correctly, have Kree origin that have ended up on Earth and given superpowers to various individuals. Ulysses Bloodstone got the Bloodstone, which kind of helped make him kind of immortal and turned him into a badass monster hunter. And then there was Carla Sofin, who got her hands on the Moonstone and became the villain Moonstone. But again, those are sort of generally portrayed as kind of jewels rather than metals, but a little leeway. But again, that's just sort of the thing that comes to my mind. There's a lot of things it could be. I kind of like to pretend that it might be some sort of power source for the Psycho Magnetron, which is the device that turned Carol Danvers into Captain Marvel. But I really like Carol Danvers, so I might be letting things go a little far there. But anyway, anything else? Oh yeah, we almost forgot to talk about Creel. And of course, this is Carl Crusher Creel from the comics, aka Absorbing Man. And I love that Isabel even flat out dropped his name. Now, here he's portrayed as being a lot more intelligent than he usually is in the comics. One thing that they did bring in from the comics is where he fights with a ball and chain. He's a character that's been around the Marvel universe for a long time. So in the comics, I believe that was actually like literally like a ball and chain that they attached to prisoners, because I think he was a convict when he got his powers, and even for a while walked around in those sort of black and white striped hamburglar / convict pants. But here Creel is portrayed as being a very intelligent guy, and a guy who really just genuinely gets off on his powers. He's almost a sensualist in a way when it comes to using his powers. And of course, he's, as I said, he uses his powers in a very smart way. Certainly somebody who is going to present the agents with a very, very serious challenge. And of course, he's also a very classic Marvel villain, so cool there. And yeah, I think that kind of covers everything that I had to say about this episode. Good stuff, folks. We are off to a wonderful start. This is going to be, I think, a really great season. So until next time, you could please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.